Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is awake at 3 a.m. scrolling their phone, telling themselves they'll sleep soon. They won't. Not really. And what happens next inside their body is far stranger than tiredness. Because sleep isn't rest, it's survival. And what happens when it disappears completely might be one of the strangest stories in human biology. You've pulled an all-nighter before. Maybe for an exam, maybe for a flight. You remember the fog, the heavy eyelids, the coffee that stopped working. But that's just the beginning. That's hour 20, maybe 30. What happens at hour 100? What happens at hour 200? Your brain starts doing something it was never designed to do. In 1964, a 17-year-old named Randy Gardner decided to break the world record for staying awake. He wanted to win a science fair. He had no idea he was about to become one of the most studied humans in sleep research. For 11 days, 264 hours, Gardner stayed awake. A Stanford researcher named William Dement heard about the attempt and rushed in to monitor him, worried about what might happen to a teenage brain deprived of sleep for that long. By day 2, Gardner couldn't focus his eyes. By day 3, he was moody and uncoordinated. By day 4, he was hallucinating, seeing a street sign as a person, mistaking a road sign for a man standing in the fog. By the final days, he couldn't complete simple subtraction. His speech slurred. His memory had holes in it, whole minutes missing. And yet, strangely, he survived. He slept 14 hours and woke up mostly fine. Scientists still aren't entirely sure why, but here's the question that keeps sleep researchers up at night. What actually happens to a body that never gets to rest again? Not 11 days, forever. To answer that, you have to look at rats. In the 1980s, a researcher named Alan Rechtschaffen at the University of Chicago ran an experiment that sounds almost cruel in its simplicity. He kept rats awake indefinitely using a rotating platform that forced them to move whenever they started to drift into sleep. The results were brutal. Within 2 to 3 weeks, every rat died. Not from exhaustion in the way you'd expect. Their bodies broke down from the inside. Their fur fell out. Their body temperature crashed. Their immune systems collapsed entirely, and infections that a healthy rat would shrug off became fatal. Sleep, it turned out, wasn't optional downtime. It was the maintenance crew for the entire body, and without it, everything else falls apart. Why would evolution build something so fragile? Wouldn't a creature that never needed sleep have an obvious survival advantage? More hours to hunt, more hours to gather, more hours to watch for predators. And yet every complex animal on Earth sleeps. Even animals that seem like they shouldn't be able to afford it do it anyway. Dolphins sleep with one half of their brain at a time, keeping one eye open, so they can still watch for danger while resting. Migratory birds can nap for seconds at a time mid-flight. Nothing has evolved its way out of sleep. That should tell you something. If a behavior this costly, this dangerous, this exposing survived hundreds of millions of years of evolution, it must be doing something evolution considers non-negotiable. So what is it actually doing? Part of the answer is cleanup. Your brain has no lymphatic system the way the rest of your body does, no simple drainage network for waste. Instead, researchers discovered something called the glymphatic system, a kind of nightly power wash that activates almost exclusively during deep sleep. Cerebrospinal fluid floods through your brain tissue, flushing out metabolic waste that built up while you were awake and thinking. One of those waste products is a protein called beta amyloid, the same protein linked to Alzheimer's disease. Skip sleep long enough and that waste starts to accumulate. Your brain, quite literally, doesn't get taken out the trash. Then there's memory. Every day you're awake, your brain absorbs an overwhelming amount of information, most of it useless, some of it important. Sleep is when your brain decides which is which. During deep sleep, your hippocampus replays the events of the day, transferring the important fragments into long-term storage in your cortex, while the noise gets quietly deleted. This is why students who study and then sleep outperform students who study and stay awake all night, even with the exact same number of study hours. The information needs the offline processing sleep provides. Without it, memories stay fragile, tangled, half-formed. But maybe the strangest evidence for why sleep exists comes from a disease that shouldn't exist at all. It's called fatal familial insomnia, and it's exactly what it sounds like. A rare genetic mutation slowly destroys a person's ability to sleep, permanently. An Italian researcher named Elio Lugaresi studied families carrying this mutation across generations, and the progression he documented is almost unbearable to read. It starts with mild insomnia, then panic attacks, then hallucinations, similar to what Randy Gardner experienced but without an endpoint. The body starts running like an engine with no rest cycle, burning through itself until organ failure sets in. Death typically comes within 18 to 36 months of the first symptoms. There is no cure. There is no ability to force sleep back once this mutation activates. It is, in the most literal sense possible, a disease that kills you by taking away your ability to stop. Fatal familial insomnia proves something researchers had suspected for decades, but never had definitive evidence for. Sleep isn't just helpful, it isn't just something that makes you feel better in the morning. It is on a biological level mandatory. Remove it completely and permanently, and the body doesn't find a workaround. It simply stops functioning piece by piece until it can't anymore. So why does something this vital feel so optional in daily life? Why do you scroll past midnight, push through on 4 hours, treat rest like a reward instead of a requirement? Some of this traces back to your ancestors. For most of human history, sleep wasn't a private, individual decision made alone in a dark room. It happened communally, in groups, with people taking turns keeping watch. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups like the Hadza in Tanzania have found that even without electricity or screens, humans in these communities rarely sleep more than 7 hours a night. And their sleep is often fragmented, broken into pieces throughout the night, rather than one long, unbroken block. Segmented sleep, waking briefly and returning to rest, may actually be closer to your biological default than the 8-hour block modern life insists on. Your ancestors didn't need perfect sleep. They needed enough sleep, protected by the presence of other people watching the dark for them. That protection is mostly gone now. You sleep alone or with one other person in a house disconnected from any tribe standing guard. And instead of darkness signaling rest the way it did for nearly all of human history, you carry a small glowing rectangle that convinces your brain it's still daytime long after the sun goes down. Blue light from screens suppresses melatonin, the hormone that tells your body it's time to power down. You are essentially tricking an ancient survival system using a piece of glass in your pocket. There's also a chemical explanation for why staying awake feels manageable right up until it suddenly doesn't. Throughout the day, a molecule called adenosine slowly builds up in your brain, a byproduct of the energy your neurons burn just doing their job. The longer you're awake, the more adenosine accumulates, and the heavier that fog behind your eyes becomes. Sleep clears it out. Caffeine doesn't. Caffeine simply blocks the receptors that let your brain feel the adenosine that's already there, which is why a coffee-fueled all-nighter feels functional for a while and then collapses all at once, the moment the caffeine wears off and every hour of unfelt exhaustion arrives at the same time. You're not skipping the debt. You're just deferring the bill. And the debt compounds in ways most people never notice until it's severe. Researchers studying chronic partial sleep deprivation, people getting 6 hours a night instead of 8, found something unsettling. After 2 weeks of 6-hour nights, cognitive performance had dropped to a level equivalent to someone who'd been awake for 24 straight hours. The strange part wasn't the decline itself. It was that the participants didn't feel impaired. They rated themselves as only slightly tired, even as their reaction times and memory tests fell apart. Your brain, it turns out, is remarkably bad at accurately reporting its own exhaustion. You adapt to feeling foggy long before you fix the reason you're foggy, which means the danger isn't only the dramatic 11-day experiment. It's the quiet, socially acceptable version happening in millions of bedrooms every single night. The version where nobody hallucinates a street sign or forgets how to subtract, but where waste still accumulates a little, memories still consolidate a little worse, and the immune system quietly runs a little less efficiently, night after night, for years. Which brings the question back to where it started. What if you stopped sleeping forever? The rats tell you what happens to the body. The fatal familial insomnia patients tell you what happens to a human left with no way out. And Randy Gardner, somehow lucky and young and monitored the entire time, tells you what the edge of that cliff feels like before you fall off it. Confusion, hallucination, a mind that stops being able to trust its own signals. But there's a quieter version of this question that applies to you specifically tonight. Not 11 days without sleep. Just one more hour lost to a screen. Just one more night where 6 hours becomes 5. Your body doesn't experience chronic sleep loss as a dramatic sci-fi collapse. It experiences it as a slow, almost invisible erosion, waste accumulating a little more each night, memories filed a little less carefully, an immune system running a little less efficiently, all of it stacking quietly in the background while you tell yourself you're fine. There's one more piece of this that most people never think about, and it has nothing to do with the brain at all. It's the heart. Sleep is when your blood pressure naturally dips, giving your cardiovascular system a nightly break from the constant work of keeping you upright and alert. Long-term studies tracking people who consistently slept fewer than 6 hours a night found significantly higher rates of heart disease and stroke compared to people who slept 7 to 8. Your heart doesn't get a vacation the way the rest of your body seems to expect one. It just gets a slightly shorter shift, over and over, for years, until the shortage adds up into something measurable on a hospital chart. Even your ability to regulate emotion depends on it. A well-rested brain can look at a mildly annoying event, a delayed email, a rude comment, a spilled coffee, and process it as minor. A sleep-deprived brain, studied using functional MRI scans, shows something different. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, becomes far more reactive after even one night of poor sleep, while the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for keeping that reaction in check, becomes less connected to it. Functionally, sleep loss disconnects your emotional accelerator from your emotional brakes. That's not a metaphor, it's measurable on a scan. It's part of why everything feels a little more irritating, a little more overwhelming, the day after a bad night, even when nothing in your actual life has changed. So when you think about Randy Gardner's 11 Days, or Rechtschafen's Rats, or a family in Italy losing the ability to sleep permanently, it's tempting to file all of it under extreme, rare, something that happens to other people in other circumstances. But the mechanism is the same mechanism running quietly in you tonight. The waste clearing a little less. The memories filing a little less cleanly. The heart working a slightly longer shift than it should. The emotional brakes wearing thinner than you realize. Every version of this story, from the dramatic to the mundane, is the same story told at a different volume. Somewhere in the world, right now, someone is awake at 3 a.m., scrolling their phone telling themselves they'll sleep soon. Maybe that someone is you. And now you know exactly what that decision is asking your body to survive without.